They found no pulse. They loaded her body into the trunk of a car and drove her to a funeral home. But the undertaker noticed something, a breath, so faint it was almost invisible. Betty Robinson wasn't dead. She was clinging to life by a thread. 8 years later, she stood on an Olympic podium, having proven death wrong. Chicago, 1928. A high school biology teacher, Charles Price, was waiting for a train when he noticed a teenage girl sprinting to catch it. She was so fast that the next day, armed with a stopwatch, he asked her to run. Betty Robinson, a 16-year-old who had never competed in a sport, didn't even know women's track existed. 4 months later, at the 1928 Amsterdam Olympics, the first games to allow women's track and field, Betty Robinson won the 100-meter dash. Her time of 12.2 seconds was a world record. She was the youngest athlete to win an Olympic gold medal in track and field, a record she held for decades. Chicago threw a parade. 20,000 people lined the streets. She was America's golden girl. Then, on June 28, 1931, her cousin invited her for a plane ride over Chicago. The single-engine aircraft's engine died mid-flight. The plane dropped into a marshy field. The crash was so violent that rescuers, finding her unconscious with a fractured skull, a shattered left arm, and a left leg broken in 3 places, assumed she was dead. Her body was placed in the trunk of a car and taken to a funeral parlor. It was at the funeral home that the undertaker detected the faint breath of life. Betty woke up from a coma 7 weeks later in a hospital. The diagnosis was brutal. Her leg was set with metal pins, leaving it an inch shorter than the other. Doctors told her she would never run again. She spent 2 years in a wheelchair. She watched the 1932 Los Angeles Olympics from the stands, knowing she should have been defending her title. Most athletes would have accepted their fate. Betty Robinson began crawling. Then she learned to walk. Then, with a gait that favored her shortened leg, she learned to jog. Her left knee, shattered in the crash, could not bend enough to assume a sprinter's starting crouch. But relay runners start standing up. By 1936, against every medical prediction, she qualified for the U.S. Olympic team heading to Berlin. The journey nearly bankrupted her family. The Great Depression had swallowed her father's income, and medical bills were endless. The women's team received no funding. Betty sold her medals, her ribbons, and her personal belongings to scrape together the money for passage to Germany. She kept only her 1928 gold medal. In Berlin, she was not the star but a symbol of resilience. In the final of the 4x100-meter relay, the American team faced a dominant German squad that was running at world record pace. Then, in a moment of chaos, the German anchor dropped the baton during the final exchange. America's Helen Stevens blazed past to take the lead. She retired from competition at 24. For the rest of her life, she kept both gold medals in a candy box in her closet. She never displayed them and rarely spoke of her ordeal. In 1996, at 84 years old and frail, she carried the Olympic torch through Chicago, refusing any assistance as she walked her leg of the relay. Betty Robinson died in 1999. She left behind a legacy unmatched in sport, a woman who was not merely a survivor, but who returned from the brink of death to stand atop the world not once but twice.